Hi everyone, it's Debbie. I wanted to do something a little bit different as we're moving to the end of our course and many of you are probably really tired of reading, so I thought I'd just create a little video for my project. When I was asked to think about sustainability, I realized that much of the things that I do that are sustainable, I do with my nephew JJ as we're on our homeschooling journey. So I began to homeschool JJ January 2019. We made this very difficult decision, and I've never homeschooled before, never really had a desire to do that, but he was becoming increasingly violent at school. We were worried that he was soon going to face criminal justice charges, and he was being hurt at school. He was bullied a lot. He had been transitioned out of a classroom that was really working for him and placed in the regular classroom, and we knew that it wasn't going to work for him. And because it didn't work for him and because he acted poorly, he was kicked out of school quite a bit on suspension. So as I was thinking about our time together, I realized that him and I spend a lot of time learning about global and national injustice. We work in the community a lot with the people that live in our community, and we realize that there's injustice there as well. Except we get the opportunity in the community to really engage in praxis or doing something about the injustice here in our town. JJ has worked on himself as an individual, and I have too, and we've both become better citizens. During our time together, we have practiced economic, environmental, social, and political sustainability. So I'd just like to tell you about a few of the things that we've done. Before we get started, I wanted to share a quote from Diane Malbin. She urges people who are working with kids or parenting children with FASD to try differently rather than harder. She believes that the harder you try, the more potential there is to damage the children. And so we really need to think differently about how we change the environment to fit the child rather than expecting the child to fit the environment. So JJ got his nickname from me and his father. His actual name is Jason Jr. But me and his dad loved the show Good Times when we were growing up. It's a sitcom that ran from about 1974 till 1980. So when JJ was born, we knew that he was going to be JJ Dynamite. His dad suggested that we watch Good Times as part of our homeschool day. He knew JJ would love it, and he does. We watch it every morning. His dad got us every season, and I was so surprised to discover that the show actually deals with a lot of serious injustice issues, such things like overrepresentation of black men in prison, how IQ tests are written for white middle-class people. It tackles racism, sexism, addiction, poverty, child abuse, and suicide. There are some things that come up in the show that might be considered a little inappropriate for today's times, such as spanking, and there's a lot of fat shaming that happens in the show. But that also works out to our advantage because we have an opportunity to talk about that. We recently traveled to the museum in Winnipeg, the Human Rights Museum. We were very interested and saddened to learn about the injustice faced by Nelson Mandela and all the years that he spent in prison. We learned a lot about missing and murdered Aboriginal women in Canada, and JJ really felt that more should be done to protect Indigenous women and to solve some of their cases so that their families could have some peace. When we left the museum, JJ had a lot more questions. He was very interested in the story of Viola Desmond. It really hit him because he's biracial, and if he wanted to, he could pass as white, though he couldn't understand why someone would want or need to pass as white. That made for some really interesting conversation. Viola was a black Nova Scotian, and she was very light-skinned and often experienced privilege because of that. She challenged racial segregation at a cinema and was charged and convicted of tax evasion. She died in 1965, but was officially pardoned in 2010. She's now featured on the Canadian $10 bill, and JJ gets excited every time he gets a $10 bill so he can show that he remembers who Viola is. He was also interested in slavery, and we learned about the secret songs that black people would sing as they made their way to Canada so that nobody knew what they were singing about or where they were going. They were basically their maps. He learned about segregation, and he was very concerned that young black children might not be able to use the same water fountain as young white children. He had a lot more questions about residential school as well. We've taken our children several times to Shingwalk Hall in Sault Ste. Marie. It's a former residential school, but this year JJ took a particular interest in residential schools. He had lots of questions, and on September 30th of this year, he went with the Aquawick Women's Group on the Orange Shirt Day walk. This fall, JJ continued to ask a lot of questions about residential schools. So him and I sat and watched the Channy Wenjack story. After that, we watched the movie Muffins for Granny, where Alice Littledeer speaks of her experiences in residential school. We used to chat with Alice at extended care when she was still with us, and we learned that she was actually his great aunt. A few weeks ago, we went to the Kejik Bay School to do some volunteer work, and JJ found her picture on the wall. He was very proud to say that she was his great aunt. This fall, JJ and I helped the Lions Club with their Kids Sight eye screening program in 3 northern schools. He gathered and greeted students, and when they were done, he gave them all stickers. Lisa Larsh is one of our screeners, and she had been his teacher for 4 years before her retirement. He really loves her, and she really loves him, so it was an all-around great experience. JJ and I sometimes go downtown and bring chili and bannock to people who don't have places to cook or might not have had a good meal. We run into all kinds of really interesting people, and we spend lots of time chatting and getting to know folks. JJ ended up meeting 2 of his uncles while we were downtown one day. This is actually his favorite thing to do, and he often complains that we don't do this enough. This year we helped out with the federal election. JJ put up signs, and he helped me check the election stations. We spent some time at the campaign office, at the NDP campaign office, and he got a chance to meet our MPP Saul Mamakwa and the NDP candidate Rudy Turtle. It was really nice for him to see Indigenous men in leadership roles. JJ has become a bit of a world traveler. He travels with me to do FASD and child welfare training. We fly to some northern communities, we go to Thunder Bay. He sometimes tells his story, and he's becoming a really good speaker. The agency that I do training for often pays his way because they know how important it is that we stay together and I continue to be able to homeschool. He helped me with and attended a 2-day FASD conference in Sioux Lookout this fall, where he rocked his red shoes. He met 2 amazing men living with FASD who served as perfect role models. So I currently have a part-time job at Bearskin Airlines, and JJ acts as my assistant. When my schedule comes in, it's usually documented in the 24-hour clock, which is all foreign to me. So he translates it and puts it in the 12-hour clock so that I know when I have to work. JJ has started helping me with the monthly bills, and he has been paying them online. This helps him with his math, it helps him understand finances, and it helps him understand why families have to make some hard choices, why they can't necessarily go out to eat this week because they have to pay the hydro bill, so on and so forth. This has been really, really good for him. JJ is very good with his hands. He fixes all kinds of things around the house, puts things together, pulls things apart, and we thought that we'd tap into that and ask him to start to fix things around the house when they're broken. He recently fixed the toilet. He fixed my car door, which had some bolts that were loose, and he was able to figure that out. He's fixed the vacuum cleaner several times. I really enjoy watching JJ grow in this way, and I'm happy that he's starting to develop some interdependence with us, where he's giving back to us as we give to him. JJ and I have started to pay attention to the amount of plastic that we use and waste in the course of our daily living. So we've started to recycle, and we recently started making our own laundry soap. He notices plastic everywhere, and he realizes how wasteful it is. And when we make laundry soap, there's no plastic in the packaging, it's really inexpensive, and so it lasts us a long time. We planted a garden this summer for the first time in a really long time. We used 15 years of compost, and it ended up working out beautifully. JJ would wake up every morning and go outside and check and see what the plants were doing. He checked it regularly and he weeded it on his own. He actually dug up some mint plants and brought them inside to try and keep them alive and grow them so I can have fresh mint for my water. JJ loves to provide animal care. We currently volunteer at the Sioux Lookout Pet Rescue several times a week. JJ enjoys cooking for the family, and we do that daily. We sometimes throw little experiments into the work that we're doing, and so on this particular day, we experimented with 2 kinds of lemon pie. We wanted to see if Jell-O or Sheriff's was the best lemon pie. Of course, we had a family vote and Sheriff's won. But did you know that Sheriff's does not actually have an E in the name? We did quite a bit of canning this year because we had quite a bit of vegetables from the garden. We made pickles and salsa. One night we were up till midnight and we were saying, hey, we can stay up and finish these pickles because we can sleep in. We take time during the school day to visit with JJ's family. We take his brother out for lunch every second Friday. Homeschooling really gives us time to spend time with the people that we love, and his connections are starting to develop. Homeschooling also allows us to spend more time with JJ's dad. He loves that, and so do I. JJ and I have been on a path together for a really long time. Our relationship was extremely strained when he was in school and when he was getting into trouble and we were getting called home from work and we were having to punish him for things that he had done in school. Our time together without the demands of school is really helping us to become more fully human. He's teaching me as much as I'm teaching him, and maybe he's teaching me more.
Hi, so this is JJ. The one thing I like about homeschooling is that I do good times, I do math, and I help the animals. I like cooking, and I get to see my dad once in a while. But the one thing I don't like about homeschooling is that I miss my friends a lot.
Homeschooling can be hard, especially when you're spending all day with a child who's angry and dysregulated. There are days when I wish I could just go back to work. I mostly enjoy my time with him though, and I enjoy it so much more now that we are focusing on sustainability and we're not worrying so much about schoolwork or busy work. The biggest challenge is explaining myself to officials or to child welfare workers who want to see the product or his work. The biggest joy is tucking him in bed at night knowing that he was not abused by a system that doesn't want him and cannot meet his needs. He feels good about himself and he feels like he's in control of his life. I'm glad we made this choice and I'm prepared to do it for as long as he will have me. So my question for you is, how would you describe this kind of homeschooling to school officials? Your answers could very well help me in the future when I have to explain myself in a way that's palatable to bureaucrats and naysayers. Thank you so much for joining me today.